The Florida Project stars Brooklyn Prince, Bria Vinate, and Willem Dafoe, and is directed by Sean Baker. And it tells the story of young Mooney, a 6, 7-year-old, 8-year-old Mooney, played by Brooklyn Prince, and her small group of friends who kind of run amok in a budget welfare motel known as the Magic Castle. And to them, the whole world's just one giant playground. They cause mischief, they explore, they just have a ball. The reality is, however, that this is a motel that is sort of, there's just dodgy characters, there's petty crime, there's brawls, there's drug deals, and all this stuff surrounding them, which they're completely oblivious to. And yeah, it's about them just sort of growing up in this motel and finding themselves. And the motel is kind of watched over and managed by Bobby, played by Willem Dafoe, who on the outside is sort of a gruff, on-with-the-job type character, but lying underneath there is real compassion and sympathy there. So on paper, this all sounds really well and good, like a slice of life kind of story, maybe a look into a different world that of the lower class, and just told from a completely unique perspective, that of the kids who just see it all as a big playground. But I'm just going to jump straight to the point here and say that this movie drove me fucking nuts. Basically, the thing I came away from ultimately was that I could not sympathise with barely a single character. And it is possible to make a movie full of unsympathetic and despicable characters and make it really work. The Hateful Eight and The Wolf of Wall Street are recent examples that come to mind. But it's important that the characters really kind of do things, or things happen to them that will escalate situations and kind of that will then kind of have repercussions on the other characters and on the general story and whatnot. But in this movie, it just kind of feels like nothing really happens. The kids just kind of run amok and cause mischief and ultimately ruin people's lives by doing some really just messed up things. And I might get into spoilers here throughout this review, but and ultimately the parents of these kids, one of which, the mother of Mooney, played brilliantly by Bria Vinate, who is really quite a revelation in this. They just kind of manage it as best they can, but ultimately manage it poorly and unsympathetically. The closest thing to a sympathetic character here is Bobby, the motel manager, but even he has a scene where a kind of elderly man approaches a group of kids, and it all seems a bit creepy and sus, and Bobby kind of intercepts and intervenes in this. He kind of ushers him away, like, because this old man's sort of asking the kids' names, and it's all a bit sus, so he kind of ushers him away, and this old man clearly has mental difficulties, or maybe he's pretending to have mental difficulties if he really is predatory and exploitative. But Bobby kind of takes him to a vending machine to get a drink. But after the old man kind of gets a drink from the vending machine, Bobby then proceeds to smash the drink out of his hand and verbally and physically abuse this old man. He takes his wallet, he throws it everywhere, he tells him to get the fuck out of here, etc., and just is ultimately it. And it just seems like a complete contradiction of his character. In the opening scene, the kids are seen, and as I said, spoilers, the kids are seen just spitting continuously on someone's car, and when the owner of the car, gets cross at them and asks them to clean up, the kids just kind of just swear and cuss and yell obscenities at this old woman and just behave completely erratically. And, well, ultimately, first impressions are hard to erase, let's put it that way, but then it escalates. These kids then go on to mooch money off of random people for ice cream. They even burnt down a fucking building at one point, which isn't intentional, but still. I gotta give credit where credit is due here, though, and say that the acting and directing is absolutely phenomenal all across the board. I mean, these kids, towards the end, Mooney has a scene where she just kind of breaks down, and it is just crushing to watch. And Bria Vinate, as I said, is a absolutely incredible discovery. The performances are all just so authentic, and yet the movie, these actors are just directed to basically perfection. And let's just talk about Sean Baker as a director for a minute, because I haven't seen his previous film directly before this, Tangerine, but I have seen another movie he did called Starlet, which is about a young porn star who kind of befriends and develops this bond with a very, very elderly woman. And and it's an indie sort of festival type movie, and in the movie there's professional porn actors in it as well. So in other movies, he just seems to be a director that takes the most diverse ranges of ages and genders and sexes and just people in general, and just makes movies about them, which might be vastly different from you or I. And yeah, it's to the point that it's really, really daring and not what just about any other filmmaker is really doing. So yeah, that's just something to be celebrated, I think, and I cannot wait to see what Sean Baker does next. But this movie, however, was ultimately just irritating to watch. These screaming kids and parents. The parents are equally annoying in different ways, really. So yeah, I couldn't give this a recommend, although the final 15-20 minutes are genuinely really, really emotional, and I think the final shot of the film is quite brilliant. But yeah, ultimately just not my cup of tea, and let me know what you thought of the Florida Project. In this review, I didn't have a script to go off of, which is really, really, really annoying because I wrote it all out in full on IMDb. I wrote out my review and submitted it. It said successfully submitted, so I was like, yep, awesome. But a day later, I just cannot recover it, so IMDb just seems to have just fucked me, and it's really, really frustrating. Because I had even more sort of things all written out concisely and clearly that I'm not able to go off of. So this review was probably incredibly rambly, but nonetheless, let me know if you have any trouble kind of navigating the account system in IMDb and sort of navigating your account in general, because I just find the whole system completely broken. But there we go. So yeah, let me know anything you want, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.